Chill here with Sirius Taurus Moon, and this is Mars, our ascendant 7 degrees Scorpio, conjoining an 8 degree Mars. Midheaven 11 degrees Leo with the Sun 11 degrees Libra. And the Moon 2 degrees Pisces, releasing from square to Uranus. And I had a eureka, of course, as the Moon is approaching. Um, what is the name of this? There's the fixed star in Pisces. Is the underneath the sea. Yeah, the underneath the sea one. I'm gonna remember that. I have this symbol. Anyway, formal out. Okay, so here is the thing that is not working for the energy of the single person, regardless of the gender. It's about, okay, let's put it that way. Let's talk about sex. Orgasm, with whichever kink, is about relaxed arousal, the ability to relax while being positively alerted. And let's upload this is going to be the longest the longest ever energy reading. So an orgasm is about basically a union of being the right amount of alertness, which requires something that is awakened or something that is of contraction form, while being in a very relaxed form. Think about people, Mars rules the penis, and I don't have a penis. For, for those that have been so curious and excited, like to demystify that, um, um, other than the sorry fact that the people have been so obsessed that they have been trying to watch certain things, that they absolutely don't have any authorization to, because I'm not an only fangirl or anything like that. I've just, if they try to film me in my own house, that is already rape. And watching that for any other purpose than litigating those that did that is also rape. And spreading that is also rape. Um, and in the context that happened, it is also a crime against humanity. Okay? So let's just set that record straight. But let's talk about um, the fact that an orgasm requires this relaxed arousal state, which is being able to relax both as penis person, male gender, female gender, relax into one's feminine. And I think Moon Tarot that talks about somebody being scary regardless of their gender because they embody the feminine. And what I'm getting is that there can be several genders. That can be completely gay man who is embodying the feminine or reconnecting with the feminine. Um, there may have been a process of transmutation of learning how to do that ethically, like not by hacking into somebody's energy consciously or not consciously, like I don't know, but to learn to embody the feminine. Now, a lot of people are doing acting. The methods which they teach acting may vary, and it can be about energy permeability. So for some people that are naturally permeable, it might not be an intentional like boundary violation. They may have just been trying to embody the quality of the feminine. And for some of you, you are the quality of the feminine that they have been trying to embody. Now here's the thing, when boundary violation happens, even Andrew Tate, that trafficked women and girls, um, basically says that abused woman becomes man-like. And so for some of you, it might even be that as you're reconnecting to that feminine, there may be more than one energy that both of you are leaning on to be safe in your body while connecting to the feminine. Now, even for a cisgender man to hold an erection, I'm sorry, yes, it's not about changing their thoughts to something else, okay, to try to play with their thoughts too, because then they're not embodied and in the moment and sharing a moment with their partner. They're just trying to perform to please their partner, but they're trying to go about it in a way that's creating disconnection. But actually doing the tantric embodiment requires psychosexual issues transmutation. And it requires being in that relaxed arousal, so embodying that feminine and trust in themselves and holding it for themselves while holding it for a partner. So it's a lot of, and that thing is basically, is something that's actually natural, but to reconnect with that natural after that sex cult programming is looking tedious and almost laborious. It's a labor of love, but it does confront the person. And Mars is ruling over Black Moon Lilith, there's sexual sovereignty in that psychosexual realm. And it's basically going to also bring up, because it's about breathing in deeply, breathing out, and so on. Both not judging oneself if one has, if their erection falls, or if they're, concerned with pleasing their partner, then they might lose a little bit of erection, and so on. Or they might suddenly have attempts to mind hack them while they're trying to be sexual or have an orgasm, or make somebody else orgasm, and so on. And those type of things, particularly if they were ritually abused, and that can be even more difficult, they're trying to hijack the neural patterns into orgasming in a way that is not really orgasmic. And this is the before, during, and after thingy. It was like, why does that single person know so much about sex? Well, because they have been transmuting their own energies. Now, here is the thing. As people go through that, there are attempts to glitch them back into the matrix, and then when one person falls, they try to grab the other person to fall with them. But they're like a babushka, they're popping up. They're like, they have been transmuting that for several decades. And here's the thing, that's that muscle in the consciousness that the people that are the single person or the psyche person have been transmuting for several decades. Which means that probably they began to work on their sexual sovereignty as a child. Okay? They probably began to wonder about these things as a child. Then there's this phase where people like grow and forget like about sexuality, and then they hit puberty again. And this is where connecting what Light on YouTube said, this is when they would try to attach certain demonic beings to a person in puberty. Because this is where the child self, the child it was, maybe they gone through rituals they were not even aware of, and maybe even rituals from afar, because children are so psychic. And it was something traumatic about the birthing or about, all those things, then definitely with cloning, but it's, and again, it's not the cloning, it's the ritual abuse that's done around that. And even in natural birth, okay, they can be all type of things that are done. And so some people just say, oh, it's hereditary. Not only. Not only. If what's hereditary is a death cult. And it's very frightening and very triggering to talk about, because it's a moment where a person, both in orgasm and labor, is a person surrendering to the all that is. And the fact that there are entities that try to hone in on those very moments to transmute them and to program them. It's almost beyond triggering. Having to stab a potato again. Gonna have to buy new potatoes. And And here is the thing, that right now humanity is scheduled to deal with that. So when I think about, let's say, before the Me Too, there were all these signs. When she says no, she means that, and all these really weird descriptions about rapey stuff going in all the media. And I was like, I really wanted to go into my cocoon, and I was using my amphetamines to tackle that, and I needed the prescribed amphetamines for ADHD to tackle those rape-related material. So right now, with all this discussion about ritual abuse, I totally understand how people can go into flashbacks, into many things. And I also understand that the world is fractions of a millisecond from a nuclear holocaust. And I think that's the correct name, transmuting nuclear holocaust timelines. Because either we manage to do that as humanity or we've been eradicated. Both options are equally humane. Because if we don't manage to do that, it's more humane that we will be eradicated rather than sacrificed. Now, naturally, not all people, here it comes, not all people are on the same level of reckoning, and it carries various degrees of triggers in people, particularly those energies that I talked about that can't stop watching somebody's content, can't, think about the people that have to manage their image. And these are people that are people of the word, people of the written word, people of the picture, people of, they are aware of image, okay? And then they have this internal obsession they have to manage with themselves while transmuting really honestly challenging things. Some people coming from Kodak lineages, some people coming from journalism lineages, some people coming from trade lineages, which are equally media related, media lineages. And having to transmute all these really challenging things to deal with while being in the public eye, while having to maintain an image, while not wanting to silence someone, but also trying to manage their own obsession through silencing someone. And at the same time, sometimes being even required to respond to certain things. And as they try to push those or project those type of timelines that they themselves are called to transmute onto the folks that have been and are purifying and are already transmuting that, there's no place for the devil to go. When I was in Netherlands, in between houses, there was a song I was listening to, and I think it was called God's Country. It was like and it honed in on the line from another song that said the devil came to Georgia, but it didn't stick around. Okay, but here is the thing, that people don't have even that God perception as they used to have. So like the devil doesn't have a place to go. The devil is homeless. And everybody is refinding the home in themselves. Because a journey of going in between houses or being at risk of homelessness is a journey of refinding the home inside oneself. I talk to homeless people And then I was giving them the tip that was given to me. It was like, try to think to manifest the home, what kind of home you like, and so on and so forth, both in the feeling of it and so on. And they were homeless people in America were holding the frequency of the American dream. It's the American dream that they are attacking. And Trump that promised to address that is not really yielding. Like, death in concentration camps is not. It's a very terminal solution to the homelessness problem, but it's also killing the American dream and killing America thereby. And I'm not saying that from like, I don't have anything for or against Trump in that sense. Like the death and concentration camp started at, like, also at Biden. Biden was sitting at the head of MK Ultra committee. So that is that it's not a this pill or that pill. Um, and this is why, going back to that feminine energy, to hold space for the passion, the drive, the erection, the telos, it takes the feminine energy. And that feminine energy, now we have Venus 18 degrees, we are purging the toxic femininity, which means that what is scary is the rise, as 13 Moon Tarot puts it so eloquently. They're scared of you to rise, she says. They're scared of you to rise because you embody, regardless of your gender, a certain feminine energy that they're scared of, that feminine energy to rise. Because that energy is, for example, exposing the fact that it's not just, oh, Mary Magdalene, she was not a prostitute. It was like, wait, was Mary Magdalene in a toxic relationship with Jesus, who was crucifying apostles? That's unhealthy. Uranus Sag, the Gen Z before Gen Zers. we are how should I say that, the Uranus Sag generation, 7 years of people that the more accentuated, for me it's in the 10th house, and I'm ruled by Jupiter. So for me, it's more accentuated. For other people, the more accentuated that is, we are the generation, they think about when they say, think about the grandmother who is, how should I say that? Hey, your grandmother was way more liberated than you thought that she was, type of vibe. That's the Uranus Sag. We were here before the Pluto Sagittarius, but we're not even having that. Even when I was saying that, something was not aligning for me, because it was like, we just love the Pluto Sagittarius because they are everything that we've been telling the society that they should do. And they're doing that. And we, the Uranus Sagittarius, like, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so. And even where the places where we gone wrong, we're like, yes, it's true, because I wasn't listening to my advice, so I gone wrong. Now, as smug as it may sound, this this is actually true. Uranus is about liberation from all those things, and not being diplomatic about Jesus. It's kind of like, hey, that Jesus had some toxic traits to him. That the devil was honing in on. And now the devil doesn't have a dwelling. He tries to dwell in people, but those people come to those single people, and those single people begin to unravel, and then the faces begin to unravel and transmute. Now, what happens when a person is, either that person will have to like live with a demon, or what happens is that the people that were carrying the energy of the devil cannot carry the energy of the devil in front of this person anymore, which may or may not cause transmutation in them, And the devil might not even be able to live inside of them anymore. So now the devil has to reveal itself, and it's like, what is your complaint? I am homeless. Well, why are you trying to get old people homeless? I don't have a place to stay. Oh, you were in this toxic relationship with Jesus, and now it's has been. You're not even calling on God. Like, I don't know what to do. You are rewriting God. And this is where the people that were the embodiment of the devil in that sense begins to fade away. Not because they're assassinated necessarily, but because them embodying the devil didn't get them to. But the whole promise of the devil was you sell your soul, you get everything in life. And you get away with everything, but you have to sell your soul. And then, actually, what the first song that came to me with Tracy Chapman was "You Only Have Your Soul," and and then when those people that either sold their souls or and even stand to those new generation or this the Uranus generation that having this Uranus opposition or whatnot, those single people, then what's happening is that everything is being stripped away. All of the things that they wanted to project onto those single people is being stripped away. And what they're left with is either they embody the devil, and if they do, even the devil cannot hide anymore. The devil doesn't want them anymore because they were supposed to be a masquerade for the devil to hide in, and they're not sufficiently provided a masquerade because they're being exposed as the devil, and now the devil shows its face and is like, okay, this is a boundary. And the devil doesn't have a place to be in anymore. But it's not because everybody's transmuting to God, to Jesus, to Christianity, to Christ, like da, 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 da. It's like, no, people are just setting boundaries to love, to have love that is actually loving. What is trauma bonding, crucifixion, inquisition is not love that is actually loving. Ultimatums is not love that is actually loving. And if it's not love that is actually loving, it's unhealthy, it's toxic, it's being more alone than when one is alone. And there's just not, that's not something for me. And so going back to where I started this conversation is that this embodiment of the feminine is like, hey, I need to be able to relax into the orgasmic experience. Not when a person is tortured so much so that they are surrendering into that torture, which is trauma bond. And for many people, that has been the way to climax. There was a channeling where there was another energy, and it was talking about having to cross an excruciating level of pain to orgasm. And having, it was kind of like and the people that would depend on having sex with them to get their, meal order, it came out as a sushi. Because I like sushi, and they tried to deliver a message to me. And they were like frightened or frightening. Like the frightened and frightening is kind of like, hey, that person is going to have to go through excruciating level of pain to get sushi when they are being treated to like sex work. And they were both terrified of that. They were both terrifying and terrified of that. Because it wasn't even obvious if they were trying to coerce or there was in such excruciating level of torment that thing just came out of them. And The ritual abuse, the ritual satanic abuse, supposedly created those nervous system threshold that to have an orgasm, there's such level of dopamine addiction, and if it's endocrine addiction, it's even worse, as the threshold to orgasm. While in fact, relaxed arousal tunes into a more spread out feeling of orgasmic field that even in the slightest thing becomes orgasmic. Now think about, let's talk about toenail fungi, okay? That thing that is scratching and a person begins to come, it's there have been missing orgasms in your body. We're calling you to order. Okay, but I don't orgasm from the order. And then you have to nourish the place. And what's the thing is, the more that you tend to that dumb fuckery, is actually you are erotically inclined to heal, and your and your orgasmic sense becomes better. And because these things work on the nervous system, by the way, yeast overgrowth fungi is working on the nervous system. This is how people get sensitive to mononucleosis, CFS, being chronically tired, and so on, and even risk of cancer. And what is the antidotes? Self-nourishment, learning more ways to enjoy the sensual, the pleasure, and then there are a lot of rituals that are done to keep people from doing that. Because if the feminine rises, even within the masculine, it can hold place for a healthy masculine, transmute those thresholds in the nervous system. People become more sovereign and are more commonly able to generate wealth that is actually wealthing, a house that is actually housing, and they're not dependent on the sex trade as either a consumer or a trafficked person. Now, here's what I love. Moon Tarot had this card. It was the Hanged Man, but upside down. I just had to share that moment with you. The Hanged Man was upside down. And this is exactly that type of transmutation. Now, as always, both the place where a person was a victim and for those that were perpetrators, to the level that they were perpetrators, they also have this Hanged Man upside down transmutation. Both recovery from sexual boundary violation requires this transmutation of the nervous system, of learning how to orgasm and embody relaxed arousal to feel safe in the body. And this is where people will try to join another body. Simply because they don't want to go through this fear of alone being in the feminine. Now, I have to admit, there are gay men that embody the feminine, and because they embody the feminine, they went through a lot of what women were going through, and are a part of basically the feminist revolution, simply because they dealt with those things and those shadows, and that is another point of anchoring. For example, I'm a person that was not so connected with her feminine side. And I learned that through men. Some of them were incredibly narcissistic and incredibly toxic. But also, um, a part of those gay men that were more embodying their feminine, and they were going through upbringing of having their emotional well-being supported, or having their emotion acknowledged. Sometimes it was because the mother feared the toxic masculine and she just encouraged her son to be loving, kind, and so on, which is a good thing. Um, it's not emasculating in itself. But I was grown up as a young girl to be more a man than a man. And then through men, sometimes I learned to feel and to express and to embody the feminine. And it's still those men that are more comfortable showing emotions that they're still those men that have more connection to emotional intelligence, even if they are within those dumbfuckery cults that have more access to me or to my energy because that's something that I'm learning to embody. And yet, when it comes to the psychosexual issue, the relaxed arousal is something that I have worked on for like many, many years. And now it's kind of like, well, there's an embargo on me being able to be with myself. And yet, that embargo lies on having a certain shared wound that plays into people trying to drain energy as third parties or as sex cults or whatnot from that shared wound, while juxtaposing the people together, going back to the juxtapositions, okay, is essentially and inherently naturally healing for both of them. Because one begins to embody the feminine and the emotional, and one begins to wonder what's that relaxed arousal thing that they were talking about. Not something you tried next to porn of a child being raped. No, because the Dodge are requiring that. And then she says that. Now, and this is exactly what it's about, because those that juxtapose these people, they don't have the best intentions in mind. And yet everybody is being transmuted. Because a global nuclear holocaust that nobody survives and sustains, kind of, this is where people begin to like, but they're having, like, I actually really like the sushi that I ate last month. I actually really want to have another sushi before I. And it's sometimes those small things. For some people, it's looking at their children and like, well, I don't want to lose that over a sex trafficking cult. If somebody's just not interested with trafficking, I mean, like, they need to have a house or something. They're like, oh my God, these children need to have a house. Oh my God, I don't want to have my children being raped to have that. But it doesn't work with the either or either, because if they're taking one person, they're going to take the other one as well. So those ultimatums are not actually saving people. And even if the same they do, it's only for a while until either we go to the global Holocaust timeline or to transmute that timeline. There's a lot of scary things in this. Okay, in this times, because it requires both courage and actually tending to the things um, that have been lying dormant to be transmuted. And this is where that rise of the embodied feminine that is necessary to hold space for anything of healthy masculinity, whether within a woman or within a man, that is necessary. And that relaxed arousal part plays a gigantic part in embodying that feminine. And the challenges are beginning to be exposed because as this thing, as that embodiment rises, and again, regardless of gender, it means that many people will be able to relax into being loved, relax into an orgasm, not tortured until they are in despair and dissociation, but relax into an orgasmic experience. And here's the thing, as they try to relax into, their attempts to still generate trauma. And then what would happen is those timelines still work on the timelines of trying to create a trauma bond or a Stockholm syndrome, which would get those solitary people even more away from the people that try to perpetuate trauma on them. And mind you, remember that I opened with a juxtaposition of a not single person and single person. It means that the spouses are becoming divorcees, or that there's going to be a transmutation that not just saves the marriage, but transmute timelines that can actually save humanity. And those spouses have to have a reckoning. A lot of them already do. And that reckoning is that, hey, that psyche person, that psycho person that hasn't had babies yet, they're not necessarily gay. They're not, or even if they're gay, they're not single because they're gay. They're single because to have a happy gay relationship, the world still needs to change. They're not, they're not, they're just not down with the Peter rings. They're how come they can, but da. Well, they can because of the good things that the previous generation did. And a lot of people begin to acknowledge that as well. Let's say a woman was building up to have an equal financial power as her husband, but also equal intellectual power as her husband. Okay? Other women that were naturally inclined to have that intellectual sovereignty and so on and so forth are like, hey, I also need to have an equal economic power, and I'm not going to date a man until I don't change the thing with the currency and oh, there's ritual abuse around the currency. Okay, then that too. There's ritual abuse around real estate. Okay, then that too. Um, there's a world war. Oh, that means that the world is changing. You're not going to have a shelter. Well, neither would thither. And so the fact that the previous generations or even younger generations that were already building something in their lives and other people coming to the second part of life and so on is like, hey, those meaningful things and meaningful contributions have a continuum, they're not just going to be crashed back, but they're going to be moving forward. Think about the United States Independence War, okay? They were basically escaping being enslaved because they were in debt. So they rebelled King George with the discovery of Planet George. They were a new colony. They were basically enslaved in that new colony, and they were supposed to pay a debt to the kingdom. The debt became the weight of taxes, which was basically debt, become enslaving to them. Instead of being the slaves of the British Empire, they rebelled the British Empire. Then what happened? The next phase, they would have to abolish slavery. At least legally, they would have, First Amendment, Second Amendment say that women are people, women are people, women are people. What do we do about it? Women are people. What, what does that even mean? Two world wars, now women are running businesses, running families alone. Okay, women are people. They do the same thing that men do as when they. It's very interesting. Women are people. Okay, so they get the right to vote. Black women are people? No way. But they come in different color. They're still people. They do all the things that people, including Holocaust. Look at Congo. They enslaved white people. Okay, black people are people. They're gonna have to have rights. Can't we just deport them to Africa? They want to go back to Africa. You just have to take care of the corruption that keeps them from growing the business. Well, because African countries are lobbied by the West and economically. Okay, they're people. They definitely need to have. You know what? What if the entire world loses like fluids and stuff? Like everybody loses their home. Everybody loses their. Then so is Trump. You mean everybody? Everybody? Yes, yes, yes. Everybody. Can't we just traffic humanity? Well, that would mean that those that try to traffic will be trafficked. I mean that. But what about slaves and masters and uh, when was the last time in history that ever worked for more than a couple of decades and then changed roles? We're gonna do the same old programming that we did, and um, people don't want that type of sex anymore. They don't. They're not into that type. I know it's difficult. That thing you have been learning for I don't know how long. They're not into that type of sex. They're not. But I learn how to be a dom and how to this and how to that and how to program and make them come at a certain blink of an. It's like okay, but they're not. They're looking for what do they want? Sovereignty, sexual sovereignty, relaxed arousal, relaxing into the feminine. An orgasm is just like something pleasurable, something joyous, something reunion of body and spirit and yes, that is indeed scary because it means that all of those illusion of power created structures are 9/11ing on themselves. And it's an out of bound Pluto. So it's all the oscillations of powerlessness to omnipotence. All of them are kind of becoming impotent. You know, and as a tower falls, it usually, think about a person that is, think about an adult person having a really existential crisis. They become like a child that screams to the wind. And they need someone to hold them. And at the same time, the person that's there to hold them is also needing to have a place where they can have that relaxing into. So now, of course, there are a lot of curious energies trying to study that energy, to embody that energy. They're just being genuinely, authentically curious about that energy, regardless of their gender. It's like, what does it feel to be relaxing into? What is it? And that's, you know, and everything that was both toxic femininity and toxic masculinity is being purged, and that might look very satirical. When I did sugar-free lemonade, the satire, I did not know about cloning projects. And I said, why all these people that called narcissistic, why all of them act exactly the same? First of all, it looked robotic, but I noticed that it's trauma response. That's the program, and I basically noticed the programming. And and I said, why all of them acting exactly the same? It's almost like they made in Ford. And I knew nothing about the cloning. Okay. And at the same time, all the many things that were said, whether it's about borderline, narcissistic, even I addressed the manic depression. Manic depression was considered something that one cannot heal. And they will have to take a lithium or whatnot. And and basically that's what curates manic depression is having enough rest and having work in things that one loves to do. Now what prevents the cycle of work and rest tending to the trauma underneath that bipolarize the nervous system? And then a person can sleep and can work out and so on, and then they have to tend to do witchcraft that tries to keep them in depression or a manic depression. So many people that said, I'm depressed, I'm manic depressive, I'm this, I'm that, later said, oh, I have PTSD, I have CPTSD. And it's like MK Ultra. MK Ultra. When I tended to ritual abuse, I remember there were testimonies. There was a video that was honoring of the people that didn't make it, the people that are nameless, the people that did they were that didn't survive, but also that, you know, that died and so on. And they said for when the people begin to recover, the most they remember, trigger of all triggers here, the most they remember is like, um, the molestation in childhood. And I'm like, what? What was I hearing? Wait a second. And that was basically that was by design to keep them in perpetual trauma, to keep them in mind control, to fragment the personalities on purpose. And as they were trying to heal, to try to use even Alice Miller techniques of like looking, closing the eyes and looking, tracing the little things around the eyes to try to track the floaters in order to try to program that person again. Naturally, it would be done by psychologists and so on. Psychologists that was done to them, mind you. Now, there's obviously something that there's been a lot of effort to keep as psychotic content in the best of cases, or even completely dissociation. And even for me, as a person that came from an academic background and has witnessed, people in hospital, and by the way, even the times where I was trying to get help for myself, usually because I didn't have housing or needed to move to another place, it would take time until I would learn that housing first is actually curating schizophrenia and schizoaffective. Um, Even so much so that people thought I'm faking mental ailments. There was one nurse that said, "You're faking mental ailment," and I'm like, why on earth would you think anybody would do that? Okay. But and people around thought that I'm a social worker. I'm like, no. And then I began to study the patterns of people, and it was like, it was even a reckoning for me, because some people are saying, oh, the Mossad is spying on me. And then I was at the same time in university doing Model UN, and a lady from Colombia talked about her being an author and how she laughs at the weird noises that the intelligence makes when they're listening to her calls. And I'm like, this is exactly what happens to my mom, because she's an author. So that person that is acutely aware of frequencies is probably not imagining. And sometimes they would come with this like really racist or weird things. And I did not understand that those are also programs. And the weirdest thing that I ever heard in the psychiatric ward, and that was already when I was targeted individual, because I began to literally expose the scientific mechanism of the body mind of how they put people in perpetual trauma that creates less of a somatic experience, opening up the psychic senses. That's exactly the MK Ultra process. And then the MK off then is the continuation of using dark occult witchcraft to mind control that person from far, which is associated with the Stargate, which is why some people didn't want me to do astrology so that they wouldn't try to recruit me to the Stargate. And some people, because they were doing the Stargate and they didn't want me to expose what they were doing, because they're basically honing in on astrological elections. And yeah, that procyon needs to be sniffed again. Um, and they basically um, they basically didn't want me to uncover the entire MK often, because as a person that is knowing astrology, and knowing the science of what actually cures psychiatric diseases, and having the academic background, and having the certification as holistic health practitioner, and having knowledge from experience, not just of mine, but people I met along the way. So both the weirdest thing that anybody has ever told me at the psych ward turned out to be in verbatim some of the agendas that are done with trafficking people and fragmenting them. And another thing is, I remember a person that was completely accepting of all the psychiatric tagging, which I stopped accepting when I understood what's the meaning behind that. And that person was going to a conference. They were a mathematician. They went through incest, and they were going to a conference, and suddenly the environment was nice, and the voices began to be nice. By the time that I encountered that person, I was like, "Good morning." But this is not an established fact. So much so that in 2019, when I was severely psychically attacked and put through a tremendous amount of trauma, I go and say to psychiatrists, "Listen, I don't know what to call this thing, but I don't think it matters anymore. I think this is, I did not know the word psychic attack. So I said, I think this is psychosis." And she looks me dead in the eye and says, "Look, you must be very brave, because people that have psychosis are not usually coming to me and telling me I have psychosis." That was 2019, where they were doing this kind of like the Madeleine campaign around COVID to traffic, kidnap people, torture people, and put them into those military whatnot. They did that to politicians as well. And that might be behind a lot of what these politicians are not being litigated for. So this is not taking away accountability. It's about understanding the mechanism that allowed certain things to operate. Okay. And understanding that no amount of taken accountability without interfering in those point of interferences to change the system, to change the wealth consolidation on the basis of that, will actually resolve the issues of children being kidnapped, of extortion cults existing. Actually, just exposing the names, even if all of them are dead, is kind of like trimming the grass. It's just going to grow again. Okay? It is. It's just like, can we go back to rewilding, guerrilla gardening? Um, but that is something that we also need to remember. This is why I have been standing strong in the sense that I've been hearing about, oh, clone people, they don't have a birthright, they don't have. Now, when you see a person, serial torturer, addicted to torturing infants, raping them in front of a camera, no matter what they've been through in life, it doesn't derive compassion is not the first word to think about in that sense. Particularly not when they're trying to aim their fears at you. And however, that person, whatever happens with that person definitely needs to be stopped by any means necessary from doing those things. And hey, if one of those children kills them as self-defense to make them stop doing that, that's just life, and it's not about blame. It's like ending the cycle. But that alone is not going to interfere in the point of interference which created that, and that was the cloning and creation of people to be enslaved by dark death sex cults that are also trafficking and murder cults. As wealth consolidation of resources between people in power. And in the context of that rises this embodied feminine.